2 more world records after 2012, which both were in the expert 3vs category, the game's main clearing speed metric. Because of this, he entered the half-retired state, sometimes still doing sessions for better scores, with no bigger pressure now. He remained at the top and already exceeded all expectations, with a comfortable lead over others. Finally, after all of those years, he could just sit back and wait for a person to try to match his scores. On the 17th February 2014, a player by the name of Wei Jiaguo uploaded a Minesweeper video file to the Chinese Minesweeper rankings, Wang, which was the first world record in 5 years not set by Camille. A stunning no-flag expert game with a 3vs of 4.49. Of course, celebration was mandatory, and everyone congratulated Guo on his first world record. Even Camille responded, saying that he did a good job and he is not sure if he will ever be able to take back his record, which turned out to be true. Guo went to achieve even more expert no-flag 3vs world records, also snatching records on intermediate no-flag 3vs. This was the first time Camille had been outskilled, and for a lot of people, it showed that there is hope of beating him in the future, even if it would take a lot of time. In 2015, Camille got his crown jewel of Minesweeper achievements. He won the last organized Minesweeper World Championship in Vienna, beating others to get the status of Minesweeper World Champion, which evaded him until that moment. Following year, he decided to fully retire from Minesweeper due to becoming tired of endless grinds and reaching his limits. Who can blame him though? He was so far ahead, he essentially achieved everything there was in the game, achieving legendary status as the game's best player. With the #1 player being out of the picture, the question of who will be next became a main topic for discussion for many players. Would it be the no-flag master Wei Jiaguo, the lucky yet incredibly skilled Ian Fraser, or maybe some new up-and-coming player that will come to shake up the rankings? Nobody could really pick a definitive player, since everyone was incredibly close to each other and they all had potential to be the new #1. So 2017 rolled around, then 2018, then 2019, then came 2020. At the beginning of the year, Camille still held a small lead over others who were competing for a spot at the top. However, their efforts were not slowing down. It was shown when 2 top players, Wei Jiaguo and Xianyao Zhang, individually achieved 33-second expert games. But the dethroning of Camille wasn't done by any of them. In fact, it wasn't even the player with the second fastest expert time, Dan Zhou. It was someone who was making the biggest improvements ever seen so far. And that person at the beginning of the year wasn't even in the top 20. While everybody was looking at the top, one player was slowly making moves and speeding his way to the top. His name? GZE. The Chinese prodigy turned 12 in the February of the same year, and is the youngest player to achieve both sub 50 and sub 40 times on expert. He started playing in the middle of 2018, making first steps on intermediate, then exploding with his expert abilities in the middle of 2019, making his way up the Chinese and global rankings. Interesting thing about him is his mouse setup. When you have a puzzle where you can explode in just one simple click, you think about precision and safety to win the game. Most of the time when playing Minesweeper, you would want to have low DPI to maximize control over the mouse and minimize mistakes, which is something that GZ completely does not care about. His setup involves cranking up the cursor speed and keeping the option on for enhanced pointer precision. For some, those are the settings that are impossible to play on, due to the fact that you can barely move your mouse while playing, which is extremely hard for such precision-heavy speed game like Minesweeper. He decided to adapt to this way of playing, risking precision in exchange for quicker mouse movement, which has immense payoff if learned properly. Using this uncommon technique, JC went on a rampage in 2020, taking all 3vs records away from Camille while getting his sum of scores lower and lower. And on the 7th of July 2020, he became China #1 player after achieving an expert time of 31.62, which also made his sum of beginner, intermediate and experts best times drop below 40 seconds, and becoming the second human ever to accomplish that feat. With his next expert personal best just a month later, it was obvious that he is a serious threat to Camille, who at this point was the fastest Minesweeper player for the past 11 years. It was expected that GCE was on the brink of beating Camille, but nobody really knew by how much. Back in 2011, Camille stated in an interview for a Polish magazine that a sub 30 expert time was possible if the mines were positioned correctly. This, however, would require a lot of skill and understanding of things like blind guessing, efficiency, and multi-threading, a technique to solve multiple parts of a board mentally at the same time. This altogether with a board that would have an incredibly low 3BV would potentially result in a sub-30 game. You might be wondering, what is the 3BV and 3BVS I have mentioned thus far? It stands for Bechel's Board Benchmark Value. So 3 Bs and a V. The statistic is used to determine the minimum amount of left clicks required to beat the game. Example. This beginner game can be completed in just 2 clicks. First in the middle and second in the top right section. Of course we can take more clicks to beat this game, however the board will still have the 3BV of 2, since it's calculated on optimal play and not by our gameplay. Here is a different board that has the 3BV of 51. As you can see, it is almost entirely full with numbers. And as you can imagine, it takes way more clicks to complete than the previous 2 3BV board. So for speedruns of Minesweeper, you would want to have as low 3BV as you can get optimally. However, there are limits to 3BV. You technically can get an expert game that can finish in just 1 click, but the odds of that are beyond unlikely. Despite this, to avoid games that could potentially break the entire speedrunning rankings, the Minesweeper community decided in 2005 to put in place limits for 3BV. 2 for beginner, 30 for intermediate, and the most important for us, 100 for expert. This made all games below the limit be invalid. As long as 3BV is equal to or above the limit, it is accepted for the rankings. And for 3BVS, it's a statistic calculated by taking the 3BV of a completed game and dividing it by the time it took to finish the said game. It makes for simple statistics to measure the skill of a player. In addition, it gives sweepers an alternative category to grind for, giving variety in comparison to other speedrunning rankings. But let's get back into 3BV. If we take a look at Kamil's expert personal bests, the last 4 of his scores had 3BV below 120, which for most top players can indicate that they're reaching the limits of their abilities and are mostly relying on luck to get one more even better score. GZE's PBs in mid-2020 had 3BV around 140, almost 30 clicks more than Kamil's best times. At the time, GZE's most recent PB, a 31.53 second game, had 3BV of 160, 51 more clicks than the current record. If GZE could pull off such an incredible time on a tougher board than Kamil, what would he do if he would get a board with low 3BV? Well, he would make history. 12th of September 2020. 29.43 on 133 3BV. For the first time in over a decade, Kamil had been dethroned as the #1 player. The Chinese community exploded, congratulating GZE on his new world record. This also made him the first Asian Minesweeper player in over 20 years to hold the expert world record since Vincent Ye in June 2000 on a 98 3BV board. Couple of hours after GZE uploaded his world record game to the rankings, a forum post was made by the creator of Minesweeper game rankings, the Finer Miner, where he described who GZE is and made the post a place to document evidence of GZE being a legitimate player. Other players joined in the discussion and gave their takes on him. Since his rise to the top was so quick, some theories like GZE is a different retired player and GZE is a Python program appeared. Both were a possibility, especially second one since it was possible that he was using some sort of external help or had unfair prior knowledge of the board, also known as UPK. One of the players who was very suspicious about the new #1 player was Kamil. At first, he only asked for GZ